In January 2026, the People's Liberation Army experienced what analysts called the most devastating leadership purge in the history of the People's Republic of China. General Zhang Youxia, Xi Jinping's most trusted military commander and sworn brother since childhood, was placed under investigation for corruption and possible treason. The Central Military Commission, which controls over 2 million Chinese soldiers, was suddenly reduced from 7 members to just 2 people, Xi Jinping and 1 remaining general. But this wasn't simply an anti-corruption campaign gone nuclear. It was the visible symptom of a military rotting from within. And America's fingerprints were everywhere on this collapse. This is the story of how the United States systematically exploited China's military weaknesses, infiltrated its command structure, and triggered a cascade of failures that may have altered the balance of power in the Pacific for a generation. To understand what happened, we must first recognize that China's military modernization was always built on a foundation of sand. The People's Liberation Army has not fought a major war since 1979, when a bungled invasion of Vietnam ended in humiliating defeat against battle-hardened Vietnamese soldiers. That 45-year gap without combat experience created what China's own military newspaper called peace disease, a force that looks powerful on paper but has never been tested under fire. While America's military has been continuously forged in conflicts from Iraq to Afghanistan to Syria, China's generals have only commanded soldiers in training exercises. Lieutenant General He Lei publicly admitted his greatest regret before retirement was that he never fought a war, a confession that revealed the deep insecurity within the PLA's leadership. Every combat veteran in China's military will retire within the next few years, leaving an entire armed forces without a single officer who has experienced actual warfare. America's first strategic victory came not from bullets, but from microchips. In October 2022, the United States launched the most aggressive technology export controls in decades, targeting China's access to advanced semiconductors. These controls restricted 24 types of cutting-edge chip-making equipment and 3 critical software tools essential for producing semiconductors at 7 nanometers or below. China accounts for only 6% of the global semiconductor market compared to America's 47% share, a dependency that became a strategic vulnerability overnight. The Bureau of Industry and Security added over 140 Chinese companies to its entity list, effectively cutting them off from the technologies needed to build advanced weapons systems. American officials understood that modern warfare runs on artificial intelligence, precision guidance systems, and hypersonic calculations, all of which require the most advanced chips that China cannot produce domestically. The semiconductor chokehold forced China into a desperate race to achieve technological self-sufficiency that experts estimate will cost hundreds of billions of dollars and take at least a decade. As one analyst noted, the cutting edge of the semiconductor supply chain is so specialized that being locked out of any single step means you cannot make advanced chips at all. But America's most devastating weapon against China's military wasn't technology, it was corruption. In January 2024, Bloomberg reported intelligence that would shake the foundations of China's nuclear deterrent. Missiles in the People's Liberation Army rocket force had been filled with water instead of fuel. Entire fields of newly constructed missile silos in Xinjiang had covers that would not open or function properly, rendering China's nuclear missiles potentially useless. The corruption was so pervasive that contractors had used substandard materials while pocketing the difference, and military inspectors had been bribed to approve defective equipment. U.S. intelligence assessed that this corruption had led to an erosion of confidence in the rocket force's overall capabilities and had directly undermined Xi Jinping's military modernization program. The irony was bitter. Xi had spent a decade and untold billions building a nuclear arsenal to deter America, only to discover his own generals had stolen the money and left him with missiles filled with water. American officials concluded that Xi was now less likely to contemplate major military action in the near future. The corruption had bought Taiwan and America's Pacific allies precious time. The rot extended far beyond the rocket force into every branch of China's military-industrial complex. In June 2023, Rocket Force Commander Li Yuchao and his deputy were removed from their positions amid rumors of espionage. including allegations that Li's son had leaked government secrets to the United States while studying abroad. The following month, a former deputy of the rocket force died under mysterious circumstances that official reports attributed to illness, though associates speculated it was suicide related to corruption investigations. Defense Minister Li Shangfu vanished from public view in August 2023, just 6 months after taking office, and was formally removed in October without any explanation. His predecessor, Wei Fenghe, who had served as defense minister from 2018 to 2023, was also expelled from the Communist Party on corruption charges. For the first time in the 97-year history of China's military, 2 defense ministers were investigated for corruption on the same day, a stunning admission of systemic failure. By late 2023, at least 70 officers in the rocket force alone had reportedly been disappeared, their fates unknown. The purge revealed that corruption in China's military wasn't a case of a few bad apples. It was part of doing business in the PLA on a scale unimaginable in militaries governed by the rule of law. America didn't just wait for China's military to collapse, it actively accelerated the process. In May 2025, the CIA released Mandarin language recruitment videos directly targeting disaffected Chinese Communist Party officials. The sleekly produced videos depicted senior officials watching colleagues disappear and junior staffers trapped serving corrupt superiors who enriched themselves while ordinary citizens suffered. As I rise within the party, I watch those above me being discarded like worn-out shoes, one video's narrator said. But now I realize that my fate was just as precarious as theirs. CIA. Director John Ratcliffe publicly declared that recruiting Chinese informants was now a top priority, calling the Chinese Communist Party the most formidable adversary America has ever faced. The videos provided step-by-step instructions in Mandarin on how to securely contact the CIA through the dark web, bypassing China's surveillance systems. Within 24 hours, the recruitment videos had accumulated over 5 million views, and American officials confirmed that Chinese nationals were indeed volunteering information at increasing rates. The message to Beijing was unmistakable. America was inside their system, and they had no idea how deep the penetration went. The allegations against General Zhang Youxia in January 2026 suggested the unthinkable, that America may have recruited sources at the very top of China's military command. According to reports citing Chinese officials, Zhang was accused of leaking sensitive nuclear weapons program details to US intelligence while simultaneously accepting bribes for officer promotions. If true, America would have had a direct window into China's most closely guarded military secrets from a man who sat in every war planning session with Xi Jinping himself. Zhang was one of only 2 remaining combat veterans in China's senior military leadership, having fought in border skirmishes against Vietnam in the 1970s and 1980s. His removal meant that no one left on the Central Military Commission had ever experienced actual warfare, a catastrophic loss of institutional knowledge. Former Defense Department China specialist Drew Thompson warned that Zhang was the one officer who could give Xi objective advice about the PLA's actual capabilities and the true costs of invading Taiwan. A sycophant with no combat experience has to tell Xi what Xi wants to hear, Thompson said, expressing fear about the consequences of Zhang's removal for rational military decision-making. The cascade of purges had hollowed out China's military leadership structure in ways that may take years to repair. Between 2012 and 2026, at least 17 generals from the People's Liberation Army were removed from their positions, including 8 former Central Military Commission members. Admiral Miao Hua, the military's former top political officer, was expelled in October 2025, along with 8 other senior generals accused of forming improper networks centered on corruption and cronyism. He Weidong, the other vice chairman of the Central Military Commission, was expelled in the same purge, meaning both of Xi's top military deputies had been eliminated within months. The Communist Party disciplined nearly 1 million members in 2025 alone, an increase of over 10% from the previous year, representing almost 1% of the party's entire membership. This wasn't an anti-corruption campaign. It was a civil war within the Chinese state, and America was providing intelligence that helped Xi identify his enemies. While China tore itself apart from within, America was quietly building a wall of alliances designed to contain any military adventurism Beijing might attempt. The AUKUS partnership between the United States, Australia, and the United Kingdom created a framework for nuclear-powered submarine cooperation that will give Allied forces unprecedented capabilities in the Pacific. The Quad Alliance brought together Australia, India, Japan, and the United States in a maritime security partnership focused on countering Chinese expansion. In April 2024, the first-ever US-Japan-Philippines trilateral summit demonstrated that America was successfully weaving together a latticework of alliances that China could not easily penetrate. The Philippines, which had drifted toward Beijing under former President Duterte, reversed course dramatically under President Marcos and expanded the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement to 9 military sites. Japan increased its defense budget to historic levels and began conducting joint patrols with US and Allied forces in the South China Sea, actions that would have been unthinkable a decade ago. South Korea, Australia, and even formerly neutral New Zealand began coordinating their defense strategies with Washington, recognizing that China's aggressive behavior had made collective security essential. For the first time since the Cold War, America had constructed a genuine coalition of democracies committed to containing an authoritarian rival. And this time the rival's military was imploding. The military exercises America conducted with its allies sent unmistakable signals to Beijing about the consequences of aggression. In April 2024, the Philippines, United States, Australia, and Japan conducted the first multilateral maritime cooperative activity in the South China Sea, operating naval vessels and aircraft within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. The annual Balikatan exercises with the Philippines grew to their largest scale ever, with scenarios explicitly designed around defending against a Chinese invasion. Admiral Samuel Paparo, commander of Indo-Pacific Command, declared his intention to turn the Taiwan Strait into an unmanned hellscape, using classified capabilities that would make a Chinese invasion catastrophically costly. American forces practiced suppression campaigns against long-range missiles, targeting of air defense systems, and blinding of command and control networks, all capabilities designed specifically to defeat the PLA. The message was clear. While China's generals were being arrested and its missiles were filled with water, American and Allied forces were drilling constantly for the war that Beijing had been planning. The contrast between American and Chinese military readiness extended into every domain of modern warfare. RAND Corporation assessments found that while the PLA excels in ballistic missiles and air defense, it trails advanced militaries by 1 to multiple decades in critical combat functions. China's weaknesses include battalion-level combined arms operations, close air support, helicopter assault operations, and large-scale joint operations integrating multiple service branches. The People's Liberation Army Navy still lacks robust deep-water anti-submarine warfare capability, a critical gap that American submarines could exploit in any Pacific conflict. Chinese body armor, while capable of stopping small arms rounds, fails to adequately disperse energy, resulting in significant blunt force trauma that would lead to higher casualties in sustained combat. Only 35% of PLA troops re-enlist compared to 55% in the US military, creating constant turnover that prevents the development of experienced professional forces. The PLA is not a national military sworn to defend the Chinese people. It is the armed wing of the Chinese Communist Party, where political commissars prioritize ideological conformity over operational effectiveness. As one Australian defense analyst noted, Chinese troops must waste much of their time studying and regurgitating Communist Party propaganda, detracting from actual military training. Perhaps most damaging to China's military effectiveness is the culture of fear that Xi Jinping's purges have created throughout the officer corps. When generals watch their superiors disappear without explanation, they learn to prioritize personal survival over honest military advice. The climate of suspicion leads to cautious and weak decision-making, as officers hesitate to take initiative that might later be reinterpreted as disloyalty. Zhang Youxia's arrest sent the clearest possible message. If Xi's sworn brother and the military's most trusted officer can be purged, absolutely no one is safe. Officers below the purge line must now wonder whether accepting promotion into senior ranks is actually a death sentence that puts them under Xi's anti-corruption spotlight. The authoritarian demand for absolute loyalty produces an officer corps of yes-men who tell their supreme leader what he wants to hear rather than what he needs to know. America's military, with its culture of constructive criticism, after-action reviews, and institutional learning, becomes stronger after each engagement, while China's military learns only to fear its own leadership. The evidence of China's military dysfunction was visible to American intelligence in real time through multiple channels. Between 2010 and 2012, the CIA had developed one of the most extensive human intelligence networks ever established inside a rival power, with sources embedded throughout China's military and party apparatus. Although Chinese counterintelligence eventually dismantled much of this network, killing and imprisoning dozens of CIA assets, American intelligence rebuilt its capabilities over the following decade. The Snowden leaks revealed that the NSA had penetrated Chinese telecommunications networks, while other programs provided visibility into military communications and logistics systems. Multiple Chinese nationals were arrested and convicted in America for spying, but the reverse flow of intelligence from China to America proved even more damaging to Beijing. Former Navy sailor Jin Wei was sentenced to over 16 years in prison for selling information to Chinese intelligence, but the secrets China lost through its own compromised officials dwarfed anything it gained. When CIA Director John Ratcliffe publicly announced recruitment videos targeting Chinese officials, he was confirming what Beijing already feared: America had penetrated deep into the Chinese system. The technological dimension of American advantage extended beyond semiconductors into every aspect of modern warfare. While China struggled to develop domestic chip manufacturing capabilities, America's CHIPS Act allocated $53 billion to strengthen domestic semiconductor production and supply chains. American defense contractors continued developing next-generation systems, hypersonic weapons, artificial intelligence, autonomous drones, and directed energy weapons, while China's defense industry was paralyzed by corruption investigations. The F-35 stealth fighter, despite its troubled development history, represented capabilities that China's Air Force could not match, while American submarine technology remained a generation ahead. U.S. cyber capabilities, demonstrated repeatedly against Russian targets, could potentially cripple Chinese command and control systems in the opening hours of any conflict. America's alliance network meant that any war with China would also mean war with Japan's advanced navy, Australia's expeditionary forces, and potentially South Korea's substantial military, a coalition Beijing could not hope to defeat. The strategic implications of China's military dysfunction became clearer with each passing month. Taiwan, the most likely flashpoint for US-China conflict, gained precious breathing room as the PLA's leadership was consumed by internal purges rather than invasion planning. American officials assessed that Xi Jinping's confidence in his military's actual capabilities had been shaken, making him less likely to risk the regime-threatening gamble of attacking Taiwan. The Philippines grew bolder in confronting Chinese gray zone aggression in the South China Sea, knowing that American and Allied support was now guaranteed and growing. Japan began discussing military contingencies for a Taiwan conflict openly, signaling to Beijing that any aggression would face a unified democratic response across the entire First Island chain. India, increasingly aligned with American strategic interests through the Quad, provided a strategic counterweight on China's western flank that forced Beijing to divide its military attention. None of this means that America has won or that China's military threat has disappeared. The People's Liberation Army still possesses the world's largest navy by number of ships, a rapidly expanding nuclear arsenal, and formidable anti-access and area denial capabilities. China continues launching roughly 30 major naval vessels per year and has expanded from 0 aircraft carriers in 2011 to 3 operational carriers today, with a 4th under construction. Beijing's military budget, while officially reported around $250 billion, may actually exceed $700 billion when all defense-related spending is included. The rocket force, despite its corruption scandals, continues developing hypersonic weapons, anti-ship ballistic missiles, and other systems designed to prevent American intervention in a Taiwan contingency. Xi Jinping has directed the PLA to be ready to seize Taiwan by 2027, and despite the setbacks, there is no indication he has abandoned this timeline or his ultimate goal of unification. But the balance has shifted in ways that would have been unimaginable just 5 years ago. A military that cannot trust its own generals, whose missiles may not function, whose officers are afraid to speak truth to power, and whose leadership is consumed by internal purges, is not a military ready for war. America has demonstrated that it can strike at the heart of China's military power without firing a single shot. Through technology denial, intelligence penetration, alliance building, and the patient exploitation of systemic weaknesses. The corruption that enabled China's rapid economic rise has now metastasized into a cancer eating the PLA from within, and America's intelligence agencies have learned to accelerate the disease. While Chinese generals disappear into the abyss of Xi's anti-corruption campaign, American commanders conduct joint exercises, strengthen alliances, and prepare for every contingency. The lesson of China's military crisis is as old as warfare itself. The greatest armies are not destroyed from without, but from within. Corruption erodes trust, purges eliminate competence, fear prevents honest counsel, and autocracy produces sycophants who tell leaders what they want to hear until disaster strikes. America did not create these weaknesses in China's military, but it recognized them, exploited them, and structured its entire strategy around magnifying their effects. The chips that American companies are forbidden to sell to China, the intelligence that flows from compromised Chinese officials, the alliances that ring China's periphery, all are elements of a comprehensive strategy to break the PLA without direct confrontation. And as the world watched China's top general placed under investigation in January 2026, one thing became clear: that strategy is working. The future remains uncertain, but the present reality is undeniable. China's military leadership is in tatters, its nuclear deterrent is compromised by corruption, its technological development is hampered by American export controls, and its regional ambitions are constrained by an ever-strengthening network of democratic alliances. America has broken China's military from the inside, not through war, but through the patient application of power across every domain where the PLA proved vulnerable. This is the story that history books will tell: how the greatest military buildup of the 21st century was undermined not by superior firepower, but by superior strategy. And how America, facing its most formidable adversary since the Soviet Union, found a way to win without ever having to fight.